So the past few days, I caught a common theme that occurred maybe 3 or 4 times in conversation. Friends or coworkers came to vent to me about certain things and asked for my advice. And somehow they all had to do with a situation where there were positive expectations and the outcome was completely different. And they were expressing their disappointment at why do things not go my way. Something that I noticed was that the way they mentioned the situation unfolding, they didn't feel sure about what they wanted. And of course, we're never really sure, especially since there's types of people who enjoy being organized, enjoy expected things, they enjoy planning. And then there's types of people who are very spontaneous and adventuresome. I myself don't care to have too much control. I really, really like going with the flow. I much prefer leaving things open-ended and not having serious expectations which must be met. That's just personally what works for me. And so I try to build my lifestyle so that in the future I can live accordingly. So something that I noticed in these situations where disappointment was experienced is a disbalance in the expectation. Either these friends of mine were much too hopeful and had a very rigid idea of what was supposed to occur, and when it didn't occur, they felt let down, or they were extremely non-confident in what was meant to occur. Something that I feel strongly about is that when you come into a new situation, it is important to be mindful of presenting your ideal. When you're not confident, it is very easy for a situation to kind of take advantage of you and give a purpose to where you stand in the situation versus you implying that purpose. When my friends were expressing disappointment, they were very unclear about in these several situations, I also noticed that my friends were not aware of the fact that there was faulty communication involved. I find that people sometimes forget to step back and examine the communication that's going on, and is everyone involved getting across what they desire? Because if they're not, how is anyone supposed to know what's going on? For example, one of the girls was telling me about a second date which she went on with a guy that she really liked, and she completely misunderstood something about him and his lifestyle, and she kept saying, how could this be? I'm not sure if she left out details completely of what she based her expectations off of, but I noticed that nothing was ever definitely here. And it doesn't have to be, but then how can you have an expectation based off what? And I often see this where people go, oh, he should have known, or he should have done this in order to make me feel this way. Well, if you two just met and barely know each other, how in the world can he tell what's going through your mind? If you didn't communicate these things to him, if he didn't communicate these things to you, how could they be known? Were you looking for clues? It's all indirect communication. So that's a huge part of disappointment. I try to have very direct communication, especially when meeting new people. If there's something that I can tell they are searching to figure out about me, which is important for their knowledge, I share it, or I present it in a way that they have access to it. I say, I'm open and available to discussing this aspect of my life, or about your life, or our relationship. I think that's really important. Another friend of mine was telling me how she was assigned a client who was very rude to her. And she started throwing really stereotypical judgments towards the client and saying, Of course, she would speak to me this way because of this. And was listening to her, but then I suddenly realized sometimes it is very, very difficult to deal with people in a work environment when they're not being courteous towards you, because you must respond positively. And I definitely have trouble with that. I have trouble when people act entitled. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, when people come in, immediately, before they know anything about you, they know anything about the service you're going to provide, anything about how your conversation with them will flow, they act very, very entitled, and they place you two on different levels. And not just levels because I'm helping them with something or because I am of service to them, but just as two human beings, they place you on different levels and they speak to you in a different mannerism, which is offensive. It's not in any way relatable. And I really don't like that. I don't take well to that. When someone is giving me an attitude, I say, I don't appreciate your attitude. We all must be accountable for how we treat others, and of course it could be the other person's fault fully, but it definitely does help to embrace sympathy towards the fact that maybe the way the person was brought up or the living conditions in what the person is exposed to right now didn't provide them the opportunity to be as calm and open-minded and easygoing as you are in this situation. And you have to be sympathetic towards that too and acknowledge those things. The main point is, how can we expect our desires to unfold seamlessly if we are not mindful of the affirmation that we're setting? And in any scenario, I first always question what role I play in it. Like, what intention did I give out for what I want to be occurring in? And we're not always going to get what we want. That's a fact. Everyone can't always be getting what they want. Things would be in such disharmony. But it is very important to ask yourself what you contributed towards the result. I think being spontaneous is the best, but spontaneous in the way that doing what you feel at given moments. Something that I notice is that people have a tendency to drift with consequences and be a product of their surrounding conditions versus kind of teaming up and going, okay, this is what we would like to occur tonight. And if it doesn't, cool. But this is our primary wish, and even just throw out a couple details of what you want to go down. I don't really understand why people complain so much about disappointment when it comes to interactions, especially parties. Like, oh, that was lame, like, our night could have been more fun. Well, what did you intend, you know? People tend to say, I wish it went this way afterwards. Why not beforehand? When I'm going out for a fun weekend with friends, we always bounce off of one another hypothetical ideals of, oh, it would be cool if this happened, or this would be so much fun, you know? And even if everything goes completely differently, that's great, but the positivity that you built up does create similarities. Being conscious of what you are deliberately creating for yourself in the moment is immensely rewarding, and it also makes others feel at ease around you because they can be a little bit more sure of what they're in for, and so it makes everyone happy.